Glen Anderson, producer and host of this TV series, Glen's Parallax Perspectives. This series explores a wide variety of issues related to peace, social and economic justice, the environment, and nonviolent social change. We especially provide opportunities for the public to hear voices and viewpoints that are rarely heard in mainstream media. Mainstream media, politicians, and culture see the world in conventional ways. The establishment is stuck in how they see the world. In order to solve problems, we need to see things differently. This TV series, Glen's Parallax Perspectives, can help us see things differently so we can solve problems at all levels, from the local to the global. This series is called Glen's Parallax Perspectives. Here's what the word parallax means. Put one finger in front of your nose and another finger farther away. Close one eye, then open that eye and close the other. Your fingers will seem to move. This is called a parallax view. This TV series invites you to look at issues from fresh perspectives. Also, see much information about the issues that we cover in this TV series and previous episodes of this series at my blog, www.parallaxperspectives.org. And now I invite you to watch this month's program. This month's interview on Glen's Parallax Perspectives will take a fresh look at problems and solutions related to homelessness, which we will refer to as houselessness, and we'll explain why. We will dispel some of the myths that interfere with realistic understanding and interfere with smart solutions. Instead of talking about this from afar, one of our guests actually is houseless. You will see that he is smart and has good insights and good attitudes about solving problems. Our other guest co-founded a great local grassroots organization, Just Housing, in 2016, and has been working with our other guest and other people to help solve these problems. We want to inform, or they work to inform the public and local governments. They work to conduct effective advocacy for solving the problems, and they work to provide smart, effective, direct services for houseless people. They understand that people's first need is for a decent, stable place to live. Local governments need to recognize this basic human right and to reform public housing policies instead of using heavy-handed policing to criminalize their poverty and disrupt their makeshift communities. You'll enjoy hearing the insights and the positive solutions that both guests provide during this interview. I'm happy to welcome Jamie Joy and Tye Gundel. So, I'm glad you're here, and we will have a good time, and so will the viewers.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
So it may be a difficult topic, but we can enjoy making progress on it, and that's
Absolutely.
what we'll do. So different people respond in different ways to what we're talking about here. Some people seem to be annoyed by the mere presence of people who seem different from themselves. Other people feel concern, and they respond in kind of a charity-based approach toward helping others. Still, other people see the larger context of a society and an economy whose systems fail to treat some people fairly. And some of us either are homeless or have friends who are homeless, and so our firsthand experiences affect how we understand the realities. So it's not just an abstract thing with the remote other. It's real stuff, and we'll get into it. So wherever people are in the spectrum as they watch this program, they'll enjoy hearing from Jamie and Tye, and they'll share, both of you will be sharing knowledge and insights and recommendations to improve the public's understanding and help our local community, including the governmental level, to act with wisdom and compassion and fairness. So that's what we're all about. So you folks prefer the term houseless, and you refer to yourself as unhoused instead of the familiar term homeless. Can you explain why that change of terminology?
Well, because homeless seems to imply way back in the 60s and 70s, those dudes that didn't care. And back in the 60s and 70s, when we were still like operating under the, what do they call that? The GI Bill. And everyone had an opportunity for a house, and everybody had an opportunity for an education, and everybody had an opportunity. This is no longer the case. Now, the unhoused people are no longer that homeless bum. They are a single mom with a couple of kids. They are some 19-year-old dude who was 18 and a half yesterday and got graduated out of foster care. The new face of unhoused people is no longer the old face of homeless people.
Yeah.
Your turn.
Yeah. And I know folks who have like small tent communities, that's your home. Those are your neighbors. So it's not like you're utterly rootless, it's that you just don't have a conventional, stable place to live.
Exactly, and one of the things that we hear from a lot of folks who prefer to use the word unhoused or houseless to describe themselves is because there's this idea that once you become homeless or houseless, you're no longer a part of the community that you've called home your entire life. And for many people, they'll say, yeah, I may not have four walls around me, I may not have your typical house, but Olympia or Lacey or Tumwater is still my home. So I have a home, I just don't have the house that I used to have.
Right. And we'll get into that a couple times during this interview here. During the hour here, we'll discuss some specifics. I want to start with Tye offering just an overview, kind of a summary of what's been happening in downtown Olympia the last few years.
Yeah, so we've seen a lot of changes in Olympia over the past couple of years. Rewind 3 years ago, you saw people sleeping in awnings at night, but you never saw tents. You didn't see the tent cities that you see now. And one of the responses that our local governments have had to homelessness is to continuously move people along and push them out, do sweeps. And so when tents would pop up downtown, they would disappear almost as soon as they were put up. And this, of course, didn't decrease the number of people experiencing homelessness, and it got to this point where it just really could no longer be pushed under the rug or contained. And so we started seeing these tent cities blossoming, and right now the city is really struggling to cope with that. So while we're seeing increased visible homelessness, we also see the city struggling to maintain this perception that homelessness is not a crisis downtown. And that's a big part of the conflict that we're seeing in downtown Olympia.
Just Housing started about three and a half years ago. I have been continuously homeless in Olympia for more than 6 years. A couple of years ago, I was behind this place, then I was behind that place, then I was behind another place. Back then, there was no Just Housing, there was no community care center. We were desperate to like any place where we could like brush our teeth or like wash our hair. Now, in the last couple, 3 years, Just Housing and the Community Care Center have made our lives slightly better, but only slightly, because it still sucks to be homeless. Sorry.
There's still that gap, even if we recognize our common humanity, which is part of my agenda for this hour. There's still this gap, because when we're done, I get to go back to my house and you go back to someplace else that's less structured. Why, Tye, are so many people in this country, in the U.S., lacking a reliable place to live nowadays?
One of the things that stands out to me when we talk about the homelessness crisis is that really the homelessness crisis is a result of a dozen other crises. So we see homelessness the way we see it now because we don't have enough jobs, we don't have enough laborers, like ways for people to build skills for the types of labor and technological jobs we need now. Our minimum wage isn't as high as it needs to be. The cost of housing is too high and doesn't rise with the cost of, it rises more quickly than than people's wages. We see people experiencing intense childhood trauma, abuse, without enough mental health, substance use support systems. So there's all these different systems within our country and our city that haven't been functioning the way that they're supposed to for so long, and that's all accumulated together into what we're seeing as the homelessness crisis.
Yeah. And our healthcare system in this country treats healthcare as a commodity to turn a profit on,
Yes.
rather than recognize healthcare as a basic human right like other civilized countries do. All the other rich countries have universal healthcare as a right, and if you have a health need, you go and it gets taken care of and it doesn't cost you. And here, one of the big reasons for bankruptcies and homelessness is healthcare,
Yes.
health costs.
If I might interject.
Yes.
Mental health care. If you lose your job or your home or your wife or whatever, you need someone to help you. But there is no one to help you. Mental health costs in this country are ridiculous.
Yeah.
And that's a major part of people who become unhoused, is they had one thing go wrong with their lives that week, and now for the rest of their lives, that's it.
Yeah, the problems will just cascade on from there, and some people have been trying, some politicians have been trying to shred the safety net as a way to keep people's taxes down, and it costs us more in the long run.
Yes.
Okay, so I believe that all people are one human family, and I brought this poster that I'll share, and we have an image that they'll bring up on the screen. I've actually had this poster on my wall at home for years, and it says, I believe that every person in our local community has a right to be here and deserves basic human dignity and basic rights. And this includes people who don't have a regular place to live. So the poster says, community is a weaving. When people are missing, there are holes in the fabric. And I think that's just so crucial. Now, the poster came from a social service agency in Jefferson County, up in the Olympic Peninsula. And the caption at the bottom of the poster refers to people with developmental disabilities, but it also pertains to people at the bottom end of the economic scale and all kinds of other constituencies that really are missing or are hidden or are prevented from being included in society. So we need to recognize that our society is a weaving, and we can't leave anybody out because that creates a hole in the fabric. So I think that's a good message. Yes.
I agree, yes. The weaving means the mainstream people are these people, and then us homeless people and us weirdos people are these guys that make it stronger.
Yeah. Yeah.
Obviously, I'm not doing it right.
Yeah. Yeah. But all kinds of people, is the old saying, it takes a village to raise a child, that kind of thing. Well, the community is stronger when everybody's included. Doesn't matter what race or religion or ability or whatever. It seems inconsistent with this poster message. It seems that some mainstream people tend to avoid recognizing the presence of unhoused people, or avoid eye contact or something. Well, part of what we need is normal human interaction so that we all know that we belong here.
But they don't consider it normal human interaction. Unhoused people are now considered the other. You can, with impunity, ignore us and walk past.
One of the biggest things that I see is, I think one of the biggest problems we're facing in our community with addressing this crisis is fear. And the other, and the idea of the other and the unfamiliar is something that really exacerbates that fear. And people in our community, even those that have never interacted with somebody on the streets, who have never had a conversation, gotten to learn somebody's name and their story, that unfamiliarity breeds this fear of those folks. And so, we always hear that people are too afraid to come downtown to shop at the businesses. And of course, then there's others who know the folks that are sleeping in the awnings, who go to the camps, who know, have friends and family on the streets, and can't understand why some people would feel afraid to go down to this place where that's full of just what many of us see as just the variety of people in our community.
Right. I spend a lot of time downtown, especially at peace vigils where we have signs for peace and human rights and so forth. And by spending time downtown, folks come by who might not have a place to live, but they hang out at the library and they're very well read. And so we had some wonderful, smart conversations with people who are not assumed to be well read, well informed, but they're nice folks, smart folks, fun to talk with. And you look at the fears that people have, not just of that, but fears of people who have a different race or religion or national origin. There's all kinds of fears about it. We need to have people get to know folks. So,
absolutely.
Mainstream media and society and governments could deal more realistically and effectively if they were not held back by some myths besides the fears. And Tye, I wonder, could you talk about this assumption that the problem is just drugs and alcohol?
Yeah, so one of the things we hear a lot right now is that it's a drug crisis, not a homeless crisis. And no one can deny that the drug epidemic we're experiencing nationwide is a part of the problem and it's a part of the crisis, but it is not the same as what we're seeing as the homelessness crisis. If we were to tomorrow crack down on drug use and get all the drugs off the street, we would still be seeing a crisis of homelessness because the biggest issue with identifying it as just a drug crisis is that it oversimplifies it. As we said earlier, the homeless crisis is the result of a dozen systemic failures. And so when we focus on it as being a drug crisis, we avoid addressing the real challenges. And so it's something that is important for us to say, yes, we are seeing challenges with drugs and alcohol use, and that is a part of this crisis, but it is not what is causing it.
And there's another myth that if somebody is houseless, it's just their own fault. It's a personal failing, and I wonder, can you address that myth, that assumption?
I would like to, if Jamie could start with that one too, just then I can jump off of that.
It's my own failing that I was not born into a rich family. It's my own failing that I worked for 20 years as a salesman and then my place went out of work. It's my own failing? No, it's an economic failing. There are not enough good paying jobs to pay for even the smallest of places to live. That's the failing. It's not me. It's the greater economy.
A lot of people who are living in their cars are working, but they don't have, they're not earning. We have this low minimum wage, and you're not able to cover rent.
And one of the things too that just I've seen in my own experiences is if you were to walk downtown or to a camp right now, you would find people that would say, I choose this lifestyle. You would find those folks, but when people respond that way, it's often covering a much more complex story. Like for many people, if you dig a little deeper, you find out they've been homeless since they were children with their families when they were on the streets. They've been homeless since they were 15 years old. They're 35 now. People don't know what it even means anymore to be a part of mainstream society. This is where their community is. This is the only life that they know. And also just with what Jamie was talking about, there's circumstances that are outside of our control. And a lot of folks, it's a way to regain some agency over their lives to say, I choose this because it helps empower folks. Right.
Rather than poor me, I'm a victim. So it's a psychological self-defense mechanism.
Exactly.
Poor me, I'm a victim. I have to be gone by 7 o'clock in the morning. I can't come back until 7 o'clock at night. I have to figure out what I'm going to do with myself until then. I'm a victim.
Okay. Jamie, I want to check with you about another one. There's another myth that says that houseless people are dangerous. And that might be one reason why ordinary people avoid eye contact or conversations or normal human interaction, if it's a fear, danger thing. How would you answer that false assumption?
Well, for one thing, houseless people can be kind of spooky.
So can some people who have ways to live.
Exactly.
I've worked with some of them.
Yeah, and I think, like, statistically, more unhoused people are attacked by housed people
Yeah,
over the course of a year
yeah.
than unhoused people attack housed people. So we are, again, more vulnerable. And those of us who are trying our best, the hidden homeless, you wouldn't expect us to be homeless because we don't look like it. But those people that are covered with dirt and they're singing and stuff like that, they're obviously homeless. So some teenage kid's just going to beat them up and say, hey, look, I beat up this homeless person.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you had heard this, but over this past weekend, for example, there was a stabbing in downtown Olympia, and it was somebody that had come up in a mask with a knife saying that they don't like homeless people, and proceeded to stab the person sleeping in the awning in their leg. So I mean, again, it's just the complexity of, it's housed or unhoused, it's individuals, and
But we're the ones that are considered dangerous.
Well, and you look at, we have a congresswoman who happens to be Muslim, and the federal government executive branch tries to make us afraid of Muslims as if they're terrorists, but this Muslim woman in Congress keeps getting death threats just because of her religion, and it's from people who are nice, white, non-Muslims. It's the huge increase of terrorist activities and bombings and shootings are from white folks who are attacking Jews and Muslims and gays and so forth. It's not the other way around. And the FBI stopped gathering data on right-wing terrorism because their political agenda is to do it only the other way. So this is a
Plus, there's so much to gather.
Yeah.
Yes.
But this is a larger system that everything is part of here.
But it reminds me of the 60s when, like, they talked about JFK being a Catholic. Oh no, gonna
Some
cause
people are
the
afraid.
downfall of America.
They're afraid of voting for that.
The other.
So I want to just offer some other perspectives here, based on the some of the things that people think. I think that an important obstacle to solving social problems of whatever kind is a lack of empathy and understanding. And when nice people are judgmental against somebody who's different from them, that polarizes society. And I affirm the inherent sense of our common humanity. I believe that all people are one human family. That should be the starting point. And so we need empathy to solve problems if somebody's having a difficulty in some way. So I live in a house, okay? So I can take for granted the routine resources that a houseless person is lacking. So I have a house where I can keep all my stuff, and my personal belongings are inside that building. And if I didn't have that building to keep all my stuff in, would I have to carry it around in a shopping cart or drag it behind me in a bag or something? I have a bedroom, so I can sleep inside. If I didn't have a bedroom, where would I sleep? I have a bathroom inside my house, so if I didn't have a bathroom, where would I do my stuff? I can hang out in the living room of my house any time of the day or night, and nobody gets judgmental if I'm hanging out in my living room. But if you don't have a house, maybe Sylvester Park is your de facto living room. And then people are judgmental.
We have a huge backyard.
Yeah, but people are judgmental when people are hanging out in Sylvester Park. That is their de facto living room. That's the best thing to come up. My garbage is picked up by a truck that visits my neighborhood. What a luxury that is. And then people are judgmental if you're living in a tent and the garbage is collecting. And I know you folks are working on that problem. We'll talk about that a bit later. But these are just basic human realities, and I think so many people in our society don't put themselves in that other view, and they don't realize that these things that we have, that we take for granted as part of our natural lives as people who live in buildings. You know, some folks don't have that. So that would be an insight to share, yeah.
May I? It's not so much folks who live in buildings. Yeah, sure, you've got a kitchen, you've got a bathroom, you've got a closet. Here's the big thing. You've got shelves that you can put knickknacks and mementos and memories from like that time last year when you went to the lake. You've got walls that you can like put like a picture of your mom and your grandma.
Yeah.
We don't have those.
Yeah.
Even if we did have a picture of mom and grandma left, they're going to get lost next time we get swept.
Yeah. Or we're out in the rain because you get humidity in the tent.
Yeah, so
flooding and stuff. Yeah.
We do not have a past to look back upon. We do not have a future to look forward to. All we have is tonight. Will we live through tonight?
Yeah. So if more folks understood that different reality and could muster some empathy and some understanding, we could make progress as a society in solving these problems because people could take another look at it. So yeah, that's important stuff.
Page 5.
Yeah, page 5. No, this is page 6 now. So this is like we're making progress, man.
Right.
So you know, and other folks that you work with have experienced living in encampments in the woods, and we'll talk about in a few minutes how to make that better. But just, well, is there anything else to say about that? Just the reality of living.
Well, I got to say, when I first started living in the woods, years and years ago, before like just housing began and before like we started dealing with the situation of unhousedness, we used to have to hide. We were behind this place, and as soon as they found out, they would sweep us.
Yeah.
And then we go to this place, and as soon as they found out about that.
Yeah.
So at least in these last couple of years, there's been places that like they admit, it's like, okay, we can't exactly sweep these people. There's too many people to sweep.
Yeah.
Because, what is that Keith Staley said? Yeah, we've tried for years doing nothing. That didn't work.
Yeah. And I mean, just one of the things that we see so often for people, one of the things I hear from folks that have never known someone living in a encampment is this idea that it's an easy life, that, you know, because people don't have bills to pay and jobs to go to, if they're assuming nobody's working, that this is the easy way to live. And I'm sure both of us could promise you that for every single person living in an encampment and sleeping in a tent tonight, it's not an easy life. You have to worry about rats that can chew a hole through your tent. You don't have any door you can lock. Anybody can come and destroy your home at any time, come in without your permission. There's no security, there's no permanence, there's no safety. And that's the reality of living in the shadows, in the forest, under the bridges, along the tracks.
It's just constant stress.
Yes.
It's night after night. It's day after day. Every time I leave my tent, I am not sure if it'll be there when I come back. Now, I've spent years making sure that I have people watching my tent. But if I was living in an apartment complex, I would not have to make sure my neighbors are watching my door.
Yeah, right. So what suggestions might you offer for local governments or others to make encampments work better? Either of you.
Well, as Jamie pointed out, one of the tactics that local governments have been using for years is just to move people from place to place. And we refer to that as it's a whack-a-mole approach, right?
Whack-a-mole.
It's whack-a-mole.
Actually, we refer to that as camp carousel.
Yeah,
right. Because
Yes.
like, you know, dun dun da 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 dun da 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 from point A to point B to point B to.
right.
Yeah.
It was the city that referred to it as camp
Whack-a-mole.
whack-a-mole.
Yeah.
And they said, you whack one on the head and another one pops up. Well, thanks, guys.
Yeah.
Yep. And
Yeah.
one of the things is that we've always pointed out that when we just sweep, you're not solving any of the problems that are happening in encampments. The biggest complaints are
Yeah.
garbage, human waste,
Yeah.
and those are things that we know how to address. But there's garbage because there's no garbage services. There's human waste because there's no bathrooms. So
Yeah.
the basic thing that we've been pushing is the first step to making it better is to provide those basic
Yeah.
public health services. So we have seen the city of Olympia start to take some of those steps, and it is a drastic improvement for the camps that have
Yeah.
those services.
Yeah. Well, and when they do the sweeps or the carousel, every time they destroy an encampment, they're destroying a community. Because
Yes.
the people who live near each other, their neighbors, that's a community, and they're
Yes.
self-managed if they do it right. And you destroy that, you destroy a community, and then all
It
you have
creates
is
chaos,
refugees.
and it's people starting from scratch over and
Yeah.
over again.
Not just people, not just a community. Let's imagine one person, a woman who has to have her insulin, and she isn't there when they sweep the community. Where's she going to get her insulin now?
Yeah.
They just took it.
Yeah. Yeah.
IDs,
Yeah.
personal documents, memories, the last photographs
Yeah.
people have, and these are all things that people lose
Yeah.
over and over again when we do that approach. And again, it doesn't solve the problem. So the first thing is to address it. You know, we are going to have encampments for the foreseeable future because we don't have enough spaces,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, we have thousands of people that need a place to be.
Yeah.
So until there's 4,000 new bedrooms, there's going to be people in the woods.
Yeah, yeah. We're tight on time, but we've got a lot of things yet to cover. And I want to check with you, Tye, about there's a court decision called Martin versus Boise that changed local situations. Then the Oakland decision came along and changed things again. Can
Yeah.
you summarize these briefly?
Yes. So Martin versus Boise, the gist of it is it was a court determination made by the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. It started when a group of houseless folks in Idaho sued the city of Boise for criminalizing them for sleeping outdoors. And the court's determination was basically that it is unconstitutional for local governments to criminalize people for performing basic life-sustaining activities like sleeping, going to the bathroom in public when they have nowhere else to go. And that changed things because it's forced local governments to, instead of just moving to sweep folks, they have to think about, if we're not saying they can't be here, where can people go? So it pushes them to ask that question. So we've seen a slowdown in sweeps in a lot of communities because they know that they cannot constitutionally move forward with sweeping people without giving them an alternative.
Yes.
Specifically, the alternative by Martin versus Boise was it has to be an indoor alternative, which was a big, big deal last summer until the Oakland decision.
Yes.
The
Yep.
plot thickens.
Yeah, it does, and that's just it with any of these legal cases. You know, Martin versus Boise, when the decision came out in September, put a pause, slammed the brakes on everything, and then of course in the months since then, things have got a lot more muddied and complicated with the court case in Oakland, which removed a lot of the responsibility from the local government, where instead of them having to say, okay, you can't be here, but there is a shelter bed available for you at this specific spot, it's just all they have to do is, here's a list of resources, here's a list of shelters. They're supposed to have beds, no guarantee. So, and that's still being debated. That's a big part of the Oakland case right now, is how much responsibility do local governments need to have?
Another big part of the Oakland case is like they can now displace people due to
Public health and safety concerns.
so
Well, that's a pretty broad.
Yes.
since the Oakland decision, how many Olympia places? This place has radon that everybody knew about for decades. This place had asbestos that everybody knew about for decades. So these places that people had been in for decades are now suddenly, for health and safety reasons, no longer available.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of this comes down to those attitudes that we talked about earlier in this conversation. And if we can change people's consciousness and attitudes, they'll find solutions.
Right.
I mean, it's not like rocket science. I mean, this is basic human survival here
Right.
that we're talking about.
And when the city of Olympia, after Martin versus Boise, they put a pause on sweeps. And one of the first questions we asked is, are you putting a pause on sweeps to find better alternatives and to find policies different from sweeps, or are you looking for loopholes? And what we started seeing in January was loopholes, right?
Yeah.
Because they started, instead of saying, you can't be here because it's illegal, you can't be here because we're concerned about public health and safety.
Yeah. What happened with the very concentrated tent city in downtown Olympia north of State Avenue? Lots
Yes.
and lots and lots of
Yeah,
tents
so
crammed in close.
the brief story of that, so it started out, June last year, the time when we
June
had...
of 2018.
Yes, when we had 3 different camps set up: B Avenue, Smart Lot, and the Ole Franklin Lot. And part of that was people separated themselves intentionally because there was different vibes in each place, different people, different lifestyles, right? And as the city kind of started experimenting with those loopholes at Martin versus Boise, they started closing down the camps in stages. And over time, so Ole Franklin was swept to make room for the mitigation site that's now there. Then it was B Avenue, and then there was another camp that was down the way. And basically over time just kind of started pushing everybody into the last remaining camp, which was the Smart Lot. And then from there, they took away pieces of the Smart Lot. It took away half, took away another half. So we saw all these people. There were 300 tents in July of 2019. And we...
About a third of an acre, right?
Yeah.
About a third of an acre.
Yes, and so it was kind of like this manufactured chaos, right? I mean,
Yeah.
it looked chaotic to a lot of people to see the 3 camps, but the public health and safety absolutely got worse when people started being crammed into a smaller and smaller place.
The city should have known you don't want to cram a whole lot of people together into a tight space like that. That's
Well,
Right.
eventually they did bring a dumpster,
Yes.
a
Yeah.
very small dumpster,
too small.
and some porta-johns.
Yeah.
And within a week, they were overwhelmed.
Yeah.
And like the residents there were cleaning them where the city should have been, but wasn't.
Yeah, yeah. And we'll talk in a few minutes about how people are rising to the occasion by working with Just Housing and doing things. But the city was just so negligent, so stupid to cram that many people together and then not provide adequate
Well, and it was
resources.
a lot of people felt like they were being set up for failure because they knew that, yes, the public health is worsening as we're getting crammed in more. And of course, in the end, that was what was used as the justification to move forward with getting rid of all those camps.
Yeah. Well, I heard you folks and some other folks at a public event that was held at the Lacey Library in late March. It was smart. You shared this kind of information and insights and lots more information.
Yes.
And one of the things that you said, Jamie, at that time is that houseless people are the subject matter experts who should be shaping the decisions and plans. I mean, we have so much top-down crap that happens. If you want to solve a problem, talk with the people who are directly affected, and they can figure out the solutions. And your presentation at that event, you folks had good solutions. How to self-manage, how to design an encampment and self-manage and provide your own nonviolent security and include people and make sure you don't have troublemakers in there and stuff. I mean, the solutions are available, but they got to listen to folks, you and the other folks who are affected directly. It made perfect sense to me.
We've kind of had to figure out our own solutions.
Yeah.
But we're not going to share them with people.
Well, you've got to have. It doesn't do any good to fart into the wind if nobody is going to.
Right.
If
nobody's asking and nobody's listening.
Yeah. If the local governments are not going to be responsive, they need to be open to meeting the needs, and then invite you to say, what are the solutions? What should we do?
They don't need to invite us, just like accept the fact that we've been doing this for years
Yeah.
and like maybe, just maybe, we have some insight.
Yeah, that's right.
Yes. And
Yeah.
one of the things that we just keep saying is there's just kind of this understanding in a lot of local governments where they see people that are houseless as being the problem rather than as being a part of the solution
Yeah.
to the
Yeah.
problem.
Yeah.
And until we get people to see that, we're going to keep seeing a lack of space at the table
Yeah.
for people who are directly affected to
It's-
have a voice in
Yeah, it's
the
like
solutions.
the old metaphor of a canary in the mine, where
Yeah.
you have you're
Yeah.
doing some mining and there's dangerous fumes in the mine, and they bring a canary there in a cage,
Mm-hmm.
and if the canary dies, you realize, oh, now we know that the fumes are bad.
Yes.
And people who suffer from public policy screw-ups are the canaries in the mine, and they should look at it and say, geez, these folks are symptoms of systemic problems.
Absolutely.
Yeah, this
Yes.
canary and this canary and this canary are now homeless. Maybe
Yeah.
I should be concerned.
Yeah, yeah, that's what we're looking at. One of the things that some people say is that if you provide decent services, then your community will be a magnet and they'll come from every place. And what they don't know is that every community is
Dealing with
suffering
this.
from this.
Yes.
And that this magnet argument, I think, is very often an excuse for not being humane. It's an excuse for not taking responsible action.
It's othering other
Yes,
people.
it really is.
What is that like? Oh, I'm sure she knows the numbers, but like, as far as Olympia is a magnet for homeless people, there's more homeless people in Tacoma, in Puyallup, in
Yeah.
Seattle, in
Yeah.
Longview.
There-
And we
Everywhere.
are not a magnet.
Yeah, and you get this. I mean, every community and rural Thurston County, and rural every place in the U.S. I mean, it's cities, it's rural, it's all over the place. But if you don't want to look for it, you can block it out and pretend like it doesn't exist.
Yes.
But any community that wants to refuse to take responsible action will say, oh, we can't be compassionate because then we'll be a magnet. And that's just an excuse for
It is, and I mean, any
negligence.
census, and for example, in Thurston County, has shown that the majority of people who are houseless in our community are from this county.
Yeah.
The majority are, but even if that wasn't true, one of the things that Just Housing has always pointed out is, would it be so wrong if people wanted to come to our community because they know that we are a kind, compassionate, and welcoming community? Isn't that something that we want to strive for?
Yeah.
And we, in many ways, are trying to attract other people across the country here, but not poor folks, not people who are houseless.
Local governments are always trying to do outreach to bring in
Yes.
new people.
Well, that's why I'd like to say, those of us who are unhoused, we're not just unhoused. I used to be an office manager. I know so many people who know welding and plumbing and
Art,
Yeah.
artist. Yeah.
and
Incredible.
drywall and
Yeah.
electricians. And the thing is, okay, if you were hiring and two people came in, one was housed and one was not, who would you hire?
Right, right. When people often move from one place to another because, I have a job in Bellingham, I'm going to move to Bellingham because I got a job offer there. Or I got a job offer in Vancouver, Washington, or so I'm going to move there. It's okay for people to move to someplace because they have a job offer, and the cities are inviting them, welcoming them. But so if it's okay for like Bellingham or Vancouver, Washington, to be a magnet for people who are employable, why, it's a double standard. It's like we only
Right.
want.
And there actually are, I mean, I can think of plenty of people I know that actually came to Olympia who are now in the streets, but came here originally for work or for an opportunity and then had something else fall through and ended up stuck here, right?
Yeah.
But I know lots of people who used to work here in Olympia, and the place I used to work is no longer in business.
Yeah.
Now what?
Right. Right. Let's see. We're tight on time. I know you're urging Olympia to do the right thing, and we've probably covered some of that. Is there anything else briefly that you could say for Olympia? Then I want to ask you about Lacey
Yeah.
and beyond.
would this be a good time to talk about shelter in place as
That'll
well?
come up in just a
Great.
moment.
Yeah, I mean, so I think we're fine to move on to Lacey then. I think.
Yeah, I know
we've
you've been
covered a
working
bit.
with the city
we're
government
kind of
there.
done talking to Olympia.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's
definitely
that's
not
underway.
that. Yeah,
But,
I mean,
but
the thing is,
we haven't mentioned Lacey much. We've been talking about Olympia.
Yeah.
And the remedies are obvious.
Yeah, well, Olympia is kind of like done with us. Oh, Lacey, we still have hope.
and I mean, we've seen it. It's kind of hard to think about, what should Lacey do that versus what Olympia should do, because in many ways, all of our cities need to be doing a lot of the same things, and solutions look different in every community, but the basic thing is addressing the long-term systemic issues, jobs, wages, housing costs, and then also stepping up to address like the short-term immediate needs of people. We always use the comparison. We get just housing gets a lot of criticism for advocating for Band-Aid solutions, right? Because we're talking about encampments and we're talking about emergency shelter. But for us, when it's like the example of, if we call them Band-Aids, Band-Aids are important. They prevent infections. They stop bleeding. It's not going to it's not going to fix your wound. It's not going to heal it, but it's going to help it, keep it from getting worse. So it's just as important for our communities to step up and take care of these short-term solutions as it is for us to be working on these long-term goals to actually end the crisis.
That's good analogy.
Olympia has been bleeding too long.
Yes.
Yeah. I know you've been working with Lacey, and hope that will go well. We'll see. We're taping this program in mid-June of 2019, and I know they got a city council meeting happening as we speak.
Yes,
So
and
we'll
that's
see
one where we're
comes
seeing,
on there.
it's in a lot of communities we're seeing criticism around camping bans. Olympia's been looking at theirs, still has it, but they've been getting a lot of criticism for it, and most communities have stopped putting new ones in place because of the Martin v. Boise decision. Whereas Lacey, tonight in June of 2019, they're voting on putting in place a camping ban. And for us and other advocates, that's definitely disheartening to see, and it seems like a step backwards rather than a step forwards.
And like we've said a couple times, it's not just the cities, but also the rural areas, and it's not just Thurston County, Washington, but it's nationwide.
Yes.
It's the modern world.
Yeah.
Every time rent goes up by 1 or 2%, homelessness goes up by 1 or 2%.
Yeah.
Because people who were just getting along last year can't afford the rent this year.
Right.
So as long as rent keeps going up and wages stay stagnant, we're going to have more and more homeless people.
Yeah.
So again, it's not like the 60s and 70s, that old bum who don't want to work.
Yeah.
These are people who were housed last year, but aren't anymore.
Yeah, they got pushed out systemically. You mentioned shelter in place, and I want to follow up on that then. People might have heard the term, but I'll bet a lot of people have never heard the term. Tell us what that means.
So the best way to describe what shelter in place means is to give an example of it. So a year ago in July of 2019, there was a camp that was on private property called the Nickerson Encampment. Just Housing was working with them. The city of Olympia bought the property. It became public property, which meant suddenly the camp was illegal because it violated the camping ban on public property.
And within 2 weeks.
And within 2 weeks, they got an eviction notice. And we organized with the residents to ask the city council to stop and intervene in the ordinance and give them a chance to address the challenges like garbage and human waste, and see if they could partner with people in the community to address those concerns rather than just moving everybody along. And so in the past year, the United Churches of Olympia and Just Housing have continued working with this camp, and now everybody has garbage services, laundry, access to showers, and safe heat. And so it was a way of, instead of just moving the problem to a new location that would be just as inappropriate, we worked with the residents to actually solve the challenges in a way that put everybody in a better place. That's shelter in place.
Yeah, I want to mention another reform that actually came along some years ago, and we talked about this on the phone. Typically, local governments have insisted that, if you don't have a place to live, you're homeless, you have to stop your drinking or stop your drug or get your mental health straightened around before we'll look at some housing for you.
High barrier.
Very much a high barrier kind of thing. And research was done in a bunch of places that said, you've got that ass backwards. Provide housing first so that people can stabilize themselves and then they'll be more able to take care of other personal problems and so
Yes.
forth. And King County, Washington, the county where Seattle is, adopted that method quite a number of years ago. I heard somebody more than a decade ago
Yes.
talk about that, and it's a smart approach. Can you tell us some more about that? And
Yeah.
research really proves this.
It really does. And we've seen most of our social service organizations in Olympia switch over to housing first rather than requiring people to be clean and sober before having a stable place to live. And just what we see is people are able to maintain their shelter beds, people that would have been more at risk of dying on the streets because they couldn't succeed in housing or shelter with those requirements are able to stay in a stable place for longer periods of time. And what we see is that people actually become more able to access services, address their, like if they want to work towards sobriety, work on their sobriety, stay on medications, and we see people be able to maintain that stability longer, rather than the old system of people getting booted out of their shelter, booted out of their house as soon as they relapsed or had to step back. It just really meets people where they are.
Yeah.
Imagine you've been unhoused for 6 months, a year, whatever. You've got no guarantee that your place will be there if you go to Salvation Army to get dinner. Your house might not be there when you get back, but maybe someone has a beer or some weed or some whatever. You know what? Because we lack stability, we look for some reason to not think about that lack of stability.
Yeah.
So once we are given some stability, hey, this place will be there tonight when I get back.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
then
So
I
we
don't
see it-
need.
Yeah.
Exactly, and so
Yeah.
we see that, and it's just not even with mainstream housing, but even
Yeah.
just with people having a stable place to keep their tent. Like we know now that the mitigation site is open and people have a place they can rely on that they know that will be there, people are finding jobs,
Yeah.
people are accessing health care and finding permanent housing.
Yeah. Another stabilizing resource is the Community Care Center downtown on State, near the bus station, near Interstate Transit Station. And they seem to do a lot of good work. And you mentioned them, one of you had mentioned it earlier in the hour. But that's a good resource that helps provide some stability, and I appreciate the work that they do. Let's talk about the group that you folks are both with, Just Housing. We have a few minutes left of the program, but I want to make sure that we give support
Sure.
for this.
She's
So-
one of the founders.
I know you.
Yes.
Tye founded it along with Renata Rollins in 2016.
Yeah.
Can you tell us? I know your one focus is political advocacy to legalize survival,
Correct.
which is crucial, and decriminalize houselessness. And then your other focus is direct services, and we've mentioned a little bit. Tell us a bit more
Absolutely.
about what we do, and then I'll tell people how to contact the group.
Sure. So for the direct service that we do, we provide basic garbage support to encampments. Like we mentioned earlier, these are problems like garbage, bathrooms are big issues at encampments. What we kept hearing from the city was, we don't know how to provide these services. So we said, we'll show you how to do this with encampments.
City
And-
of Olympia has a garbage utility.
Yes, yes. So
Go
what
tell
we
them
started
that.
doing was working with the residents to provide weekly garbage removal. What that
Yeah.
looks like is with the new encampment, we do a big community cleanup, bring the whole community together. Once we get the camp back down to a baseline, we just provide a weekly garbage service. We come by, pick up the garbage people bagged, voila, no garbage.
That's what happens in my neighborhood.
yeah,
Because
yeah.
people put out their garbage at the right date and time,
Imagine
and a
that.
truck
Yes.
comes by and picks it up.
Yep. And so
This-
then we
this is
also
easy.
we work with local faith communities and other nonprofits to get people connected with outreach services. Churches that we work with help supply survival supplies for people. We have laundry volunteers that help people get connected to laundry. So just these basic public health and safety supports that
Yeah.
we can provide to help make people's lives a little bit easier.
Yeah.
There are other organizations that are also trying to make people's lives easier, but they are corporations or they are like part of the system, the state. One of the things about Just Housing is Just Housing talks with the people who are actually unhoused and asks them, doesn't tell them, here's what we're giving you. Just Housing asks,
Yes.
what do you need?
Yes.
Yep. And that's what we got. We need garbage support.
Yeah.
We need a place
Yeah.
to go to the bathroom.
Yeah.
And so that's the gap
And
that we
socks.
filled.
We always need socks.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So this basic bottom-up grassroots organizing
Yep.
is the remedy. You folks are great at it. People can contact Just Housing at phone area code 360-562-0239, email contact@justhousingolympia.org, and the website www.justhousingolympia.org. Then you have a Facebook that's facebook.com/justhousingoly. So that's all good stuff. And then you meet weekly. We'll put information, I'll write up some information, and we may add some other resources and post that to my blog, as well as a summary of what we've talked about during this hour. The blog is www.parallaxperspectives.org, and we'll include
You're
that
gonna
in the
write that
closing.
down, right?
Yes.
We'll have that in the closing credits.
Great.
And we'll provide information for people, so check that out. They can watch this interview there at any time, and the interview will appear on TCTV, Thurston County Media, Channel 22, 3 times a week during June of 2019. So people can help, people can connect. You're
Yeah.
receptive to volunteers. And
Yes, for both the political advocacy and the direct support, we're always looking for the direct support people that are able to join our rolling refuse removal, which is our garbage cleanup team. They meet on Sundays and go out to the camps there.
Great.
We are always looking for people to help with laundry. And then for political advocacy, people that can just get involved, write
Yeah.
letters to your city
Yeah,
council members,
yeah.
meet with your council members, and just
Yeah.
support the ask that we're saying
Right.
to make sure that every person in our community has a safe,
Right.
legal, and appropriate place to
Right.
live.
Well, I want to thank Jamie Joy, and I want to thank Tye Gundel. I want to thank all the people who've been watching the interview. This TV series deals with problems and proposes very workable solutions. We've done that during this hour. Houselessness is a very
Really
serious
good.
problem throughout the U.S., but workable solutions do exist. We need to understand the problems. We need to work for long-term solutions that includes changing our society's values and attitudes and our economy so that every person is valued. We need short-term solutions as well. The immediate remedy is to see this as a social and economic issue rather than a law enforcement issue, and rather than punish the people who are victims of the economic system, stop criminalizing poverty. The other immediate remedy is make sure that every person has a decent, reliable place to live. Research proves that stabilizing housing is the first step before dealing with other problems. And a crucial first step is to actually bring the affected people directly into the conversation and into shaping public policy. Their firsthand experiences and insights are what governments need. So we can solve the problems if we really want to. You can get information about a wide variety of issues related to peace, social justice, and nonviolence through my blog, www.parallaxperspectives.org. You can also phone me at 360-491-9093. We are all one human family. We all share one planet. We can make the world a better place, but we all have to work at it. And the world needs exactly what you have to offer. Thanks.